Hello and welcome to another tutorial. My name is Schell, and today I will be talking to you about endless games. Do players need goals? On mobile platforms, we see more and more games going free to play. A game with a free to play model allows the player to play or download the game for free, and revenue is gathered by charging money for in-game items. In 2011, 65% of the revenue from the top 100 games in the App Store was free to play, and this has probably increased since then. In 2011, online/mobile games accounted for 49% of global video games revenue, a staggering 31 billion, giving a picture of just how big of a player the free-to-play model really is. A very important aspect of the free-to-play business model is player retention. In this video, I want to explore if it's possible to have goals in endless games, how this affects the player's game experience, and what you need to think about to keep it interesting over long periods of time. The definition of endless is having or seeming to have no end, eternal or infinite. In the 1970s and 1980s, the definition of endless may not have been directly applicable to games, as games ended when the player stopped playing. But we still would consider a game like Tetris to be endless, as you can play it over and over again, even though it ends when you die. But you can play it forever if you don't die. Today we have games like World of Warcraft, where the world is still there, even when you're not playing. Therefore, the term endless games is ambiguous. For this video, I will refer to endless games as games that do not have a definite ending or resolution. When you start off figuring out an idea for your game, it's crucial to find the target audience, and you naturally go researching what demographics to target and how to effectively do so. Demographics generally refer to external factors like age, gender, income, or ethnicity, and those can be a useful way to group your audience. But when we group people together by these external factors, we are trying to get at something eternal, what each group finds pleasurable. A direct approach is to focus less on how players appear on the outside and focus more on how they think on the inside. This has to do with what a person enjoys the most, the kind of pleasures they look for when participating in a game activity or any other activity. There are many pleasures in the world, and no one sees only one kind. Looking at what we find pleasurable in games will help you design a game that is pleasurable in itself, not just because of the end. People have preferences of pleasure, and game designer Mark LeBlanc has proposed a list of what he considers the 8 primary game pleasures. The first pleasure is sensation. The pleasure of sensation involves using your senses. It is primarily the aesthetics of your game that will deliver these pleasures of sensation. Fantasy is the second pleasure. This is the pleasure of the imaginary world, and the pleasure of imagining yourself as something you are not. The third is narrative. This is the pleasure of a dramatic unfolding of a sequence of events, however it happens. The next pleasure is challenge. Challenge can be considered one of the core pleasures of gameplay, since every game at its heart has a problem to resolve. Next is fellowship. Fellowship is the pleasure of everything enjoyable about friendship, cooperation, and community. The pleasure of expression is the pleasure of expressing yourself and the pleasure of creating things, like customizing your character. Submission is the pleasure of leaving the real world behind and entering into a new and more enjoyable world with a new set of rules and meaning, also commonly referred to as escapism. The last pleasure is discovery. Anytime you seek and find something new, that is a discovery. Sometimes this is the exploration of the game world, and sometimes it's the discovery of a secret feature or clever strategy. Discovering new things is key to game pleasure, and it's a great challenge to give endless games this sense of discovery over long periods of time. With a free-to-play model, you are able to release new content over time, hence you can keep up with player discoveries if you're smart about your content. If you just release the content right in their face and say, here it is, there won't be much discovery involved. Keeping the player busy is important, because if there is more To do, they will stay longer. Release your content gradually, or players can be overwhelmed. You could also opt for user-generated content, adding in the pleasure of expression. The patterns of pleasure that emerge within and between games offer special kinds of enjoyment. Game designer Brian Moriarty uses the word entrainment to refer to this kind of rhythmic pleasure. Entrainment is the process of falling into a patterned activity. Players explore the space of possible game pleasures. Progress through the space occurs through patterned repetition, the drumbeat driving the heart of a game experience. Entrainment occupies not just perceptual sensations, but modes of thinking as well. The patterns of a game initially draws us in, moving us forward, encouraging us to play. With that said, do games really need goals? Salen and Zimmerman argues that games differ from other forms of play because of the fact that they have a goal and a quantifiable outcome. When it comes to understanding the pleasure of a game, the goal plays an absolutely crucial role. A game's goal is often the largest single element that drives the pleasure of a player. The goal helps move the player through the space of possibility. So if we consider that endless games do not have an end or a final goal, are endless games not games, but instead just endless play with a quantifiable outcome?